Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Skeptic. Welcome to the Scares. It Follows came out in 2014. It was picked up by Radius TWC. It was met with critical acclaim and made its money back tenfold.
Literally. It was written and directed by David Robert Mitchell, a relatively new director.
He explained that the movie was based on recurring dreams that he had about being followed, which makes sense. And so he described,
I didn't use those images for the film, but the basic idea and the feeling I used. From what I understand, it's an anxiety dream.
And when he decided to make a story about transmitting that anxiety, he came up with the STD horror plot that we have here today. So, if you haven't seen the movie or it's been a while, here's a recap. And yes, this is your one and only warning for spoilers. Boo.
The movie starts with a very simple but effective first scene. A nameless girl runs out of the house, terrified. It's clear it's not from something the audience can see, or even from her own house. But with fear written all over her face, she flees, only to end the chase at the beach, resulting in some blunt results.
We'll explore this scene later, but for now, all I can say is, well done.
We then shift gears over to our main character, Jamie, or Jay for short, played by Micah Monroe. She shares her excitement of going on a date with her
siblings, roommates, friends who hang out when she's not there?
Her sister and her friends. Gotcha. One of those friends is Paul, played by Keir Gilchrist, who has had a crush on Jay for years.
That's important for later.
Her new boyfriend, Hugh, played by Jake Weary, takes her out to a movie. They play the unusual game of guess who I'd want to trade places with, and Hugh picks the kid because he's got his whole life ahead of him.
See, this is what I love about writing and film, at least on a general basis. The game and the question seem to be throwaway lines, but then have sudden relevance when you watch the film for a second time. I love it.
Hugh points to a girl in the back of the theater, which Jay can't see. This freaks him out, and they leave. Later on, they become intimate. A little too intimate. Jay wakes up tied to a wheelchair, giving striking serial killer vibes, but no. Hugh explains a surprisingly complicated curse that he just gave her through intercourse.
Curse STDs, huh? Weren't they already, though?
Anyone with a curse has an entity follow you slowly. It can take on the form of anyone. Once the curse is passed on, the previous victim is scot-free. Unless the new victim gets killed, then that entity will move down the line of cursed victims. Her only salvation is to pass the curse on to somebody else, transferring the curse. As long as this continues eternally, theoretically, no one ever has to die.
But this is a movie, so you know some shit's gonna go down.
He drops her off at home afterwards in the protection of her sister and her friends, but she's understandably confused and traumatized. She tries going back to school, but sees an old woman walking straight for her. She is spooked. At home, it tries breaking through the window. It takes the forms of a tall, eyeless man and a urinating prostitute. As you can imagine, Jay flips out a bit. Their neighbor and classmate Greg, played by Daniel Zavato, comes to help out. He also helps them track down Hugh, whose real name is revealed to be Jeff. His alias and makeshift home security system make it clear he's been dealing with this curse for quite some time. He's unable to help out more than recommend that she sleep with someone else, thus transferring the curse. So instead, Greg drives them to his family's beach house. Her friends are not sure whether to believe her or not, but at least are supporting her possible mental breakdown by not getting her to a doctor. It's quiet and relaxing, which for some reason makes Jay forget to give a lookout for anyone approaching her. It grabs her, but doesn't kill her immediately. But she's attacked like she's being assaulted by the Invisible Man, making it difficult not to believe her. She runs away panicked and crashes Greg's car into a cornfield and right into a hospital bed. Out of desperation, she bangs Greg, who didn't see the supernatural invisible assault earlier and therefore has no reason to believe the whole curse thing, so him screwing her makes him what kind of person? Not like she thought of his safety either, so A few days later, presumably because the entity is walking all the way from the beach to their suburban street, in the meantime, Greg is seen with a few other girls.
Man whore.
So it's possible he got them killed as well?
Batman whore.
Jay witnesses the entity crash through Greg's window and sees it take the form of his mom and rush him, killing him via the briefest kind of rape I've ever seen on film. She realizes she's the entity's target once more, so they plot to kill it, even though they shot it earlier and that didn't work, so yep. But they try anyway by leading it to a swimming pool with electronics, ready to zap it. It doesn't go well. At her wit's end, Paul again offers himself to her and she accepts. He tries bumming the curse, presumably on a helpless and unknowing prostitute, and they walk down the street together holding hands, forever cautious.
You know, even without the commentary, the ending is still chilling. The threat can't be stopped, and they have to live the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders. Damn. But enough of that. Now, audience, which scene scared you?
What a cool entity. It's slow, but deadly, like other well-known killers. It's formless, only imitating other people. It has no emotion, so we can't fathom its motive or thinking, most likely because it has none. My interpretation is that it's an embodiment of fear of intimacy between young people and the personification of the true-to-life horrors of STDs. Other works have also explored this concept with semi-fantastical executions, like the graphic novel Black Hole by Charles Burns.
That's why films are so hard to analyze sometimes on a technical level. In the creative process, how do you break down an idea? In this case, the plot was based on the director's dreams, so it's not so much a well-timed jump scare, but a feeling that resonates with us. And it takes masterful filmmaking to convey that very specific feeling.
Not only does this concept make the creature unique as a sexually transmitted monster, which makes it all the more terrifying, but its relation to the real-world problem makes it all the more real. Like real-life cases, a disease is sometimes something you can never get rid of. It stays with you all your life. Things like HIV or AIDS can have an unpredictable time period before it turns fatal, which in itself is a terrifying way to live. Like our leads at the end, they'll never know when they'll meet their end. All they can do is stand by each other.
There's talks of a sequel where they would go down the line of victims and possibly learn the origins of the entity. But my issue with that, though, is that it's clear this plot was based on a very specific commentary of real-life horrors, versus being taken literally. So the sequel could possibly undermine the message that was established in the first film.
What also helps in its creepiness is the camera work. It's rarely shown up close because it often looks normal or even silly. But knowing your doom is off in the distance in one of these panning wide shots creates a constant anxiety. It's a feeling of being hunted by the fact that it's always slow means it's less likely to surprise you, but more likely to wear you down, like the girl in the first scene. Speaking of... The first scene is simple but perfectly orchestrated. That's why I wanted to take a moment to break it down completely. Annie comes out of the house and the percussions of the music set the tone. She backs away, staring at something we can't see, because the camera is turned away from it. She's focused on something that no one can see. Her neighbor in the background confirms Annie's behavior is odd, and not just weird B-horror movie behavior. She runs around the thing we cannot see, making for the full 360 degrees. Her dad comes out as a reference to confirm it's not a domestic problem. Then she leaves with a car. We set the camera behind her in the car as she looks back, like we're part of the chase, still keeping the view away from her pursuer. Notice too how it turns evening to night to indicate how long she's been running, or at least to imply that. Then we dolly in past the car to reveal her on the beach. We have a nice wide shot of her on the phone to show her cornered and alone. Then we cut to a medium wide shot to get personal, seeing her face and reactions. She sees the pursuer, we cut to her perspective to show there's nothing there. So we can ask, is she crazy? And then we get these two quick brutal cuts, not only for shock value, but to guarantee that she's not crazy, but a true threat looms for the remainder of the film. Perfect.
See, that's the beauty of visual media. You can convey a lot of messages in just a few seconds, and this first scene establishes the suspense, the mystery, and the intrigue going forward.
I realize moments like this are a sensitive subject, and for good reason. Even though the scene isn't exactly a sexual assault, it comes off as one. Jay is lying there oblivious and happy, confessing her fantasy for a perfect date and getaway when she was younger. It looks like Hugh, or Jeff, is coming in for smooching only suddenly and unexpectedly, even for the audience, with chloroform.
It's these sudden attacks that are always the scariest, because it makes you question how vulnerable you are every second of the day, and it makes you realize you can't see any attack or anything coming at you from behind. Yes.
She wakes up, tired, and, like the audience, has a restricted viewpoint, which makes us share in her frustration and anxiety of not knowing what's happening. On top of that, all we can see is an isolated dump of a place that's perfect for murdering, where no one can hear you scream, and the guy you shagged is talking nonsense, feeling like there's no rationalizing with him. You could argue Jeff had the right intention of warning her about the curse by any means possible, but when you realize it was really to his benefit, him passing on the curse along does feel like a kind of forceful and violating action. Jeff explains the monster takes on many forms, mostly people you might know and trust, like a family member or friend, which does happen to Jay, but the entity takes on forms of people she doesn't recognize. One theory is that the entity sometimes takes on forms of past victims, which is a creepy concept to us, but Jay wouldn't know about that. But another theory is that the form it takes are based on the target's subconscious. That would explain why you might see people you know or people that represent a fear. The intimidating eyeless tall man and the beat-up woman could represent the trauma Jay experienced through the aforementioned sexual assault. The other forms are a whole other video of analysis, but the interesting point is that this theory suggests the monster doesn't choose its forms, but manifests the victim's subconscious. Passing it on is actually passing on the psychic link to manifest one's fears into the physical entity which can and will kill you.
I hope you all enjoyed this evening's show. It was a special kind of spooktacular. So next week, we're going to take a look at... Gotta go, folks. Kids, stay in school, like, subscribe, and remember, sex kills. See you all next week.